Hello there, friends. It's Jimmy Maverick. Welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Maverick Podcast. And today we're going to talk about the Week 7 starts and sits. We're going to go over every game. We're going to let you know if it's going to be a graveyard, a blowout, or a fantasy gold mine. Important information for you to know, especially during this byepocalypse Week 7. So let's go ahead and do it right now.
Listen up. It's time for the Fantasy Maverick Podcast, starring the guy who's going to help you win that fantasy championship, Jimmy Maverick.
Hello there, friends. Welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Maverick Podcast. Thank you very much for watching today. And hey, before we get started, if you could please give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, share this with your friends, and of course, subscribe. All those things really help me out with that YouTube algorithm, and I do very much appreciate it. So thank you in advance for doing that. And well, let's just get right to it. Now, of course, we've got the byepocalypse happening this weekend. We got 6 fantasy relevant teams and a lot of fantasy relevant players that are on bye. And even though we're going to be going through all these games, we're going to be talking about starting some guys and sitting some other guys. You may be in a situation where you're just going to have to start a guy that I say you should sit. And there are several names on here where I'm like, don't start this guy. I don't trust this guy. Don't do this guy. But there are several cases where I, in fact, in my leagues, I'm going to have to start those guys because I literally don't have anyone else. And that's just the way it is in fantasy sometimes. But before you do that, please, today, go onto your waiver wire and see who's available. A lot of players had to get dropped in order to make room for those players covering for all these guys on bye this week. And so there are going to be some surprises on your waiver wire. And I invite you to please check it out and go and see who is available and who can help your team this week, especially when it comes to quarterbacks, defenses, kickers. There's lots of players that people have had to make room for, and so guys have gotten dumped onto the waiver wire, and they could really help your team out. Maybe not necessarily this week, but going into future weeks. And it's a great time to find some nice value players on the waiver wire. So be sure to do that. So one thing I noticed, I divide my games up into either fantasy graveyards, where you want to just minimize your exposure because there's not going to be a lot of fantasy value there. Blowouts, where it's going to be great for one team and terrible for the other. And then fantasy gold mines, which is good for both teams. Lots of fantasy points scored. It should be good all around. This week, surprisingly, 2 of my 3 graveyard games are the Sunday night game and the Monday night game. So it's going to be one of those things where you don't want to head into Sunday night needing points because it's not a great situation with those games. We're going to go over them and we'll just do it right now. So the first game I have listed as a fantasy graveyard is the Broncos at the Browns, the Thursday night game. We've got 2 struggling offenses dealing with some key injuries and decent defenses. So that means it's not going to be great for fantasy. Now, the Broncos, we've got word that Jerry Jeudy might return this week. I hear he is doubtful to play, so I would not be counting on him to start. It is a good matchup for receivers. The Browns are top 6 for opposing wide receivers. So I think Sutton is a start and Tim Patrick is a start. And I would only start Tim Patrick if Jerry Jeudy sits, which I do expect to happen. So those guys would be good to go. Bridgewater gets a top 3 matchup, and I think he would be a great streaming option. Despite how much he struggled last week, this is not going to be as tough a matchup. And so you've got a good matchup for the receivers, good matchup for the quarterback. He should put up respectable numbers and be good for you. The guys that, normally I'd say that you should sit Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams, but that might be impossible with so many people out. Just know that it is a 50-50 split. It is a relatively tough run defense. And so their opportunities for points is going to be limited. Look for 8 to 10 points from each of them. And that might be good enough. That might be just what you're looking for in your running back position. Now, on the Browns side, we've got news that Chubb might be able to go this week. If he does, of course, you're going to start him. If he doesn't start, then I'd be okay starting Ernest Johnson. I don't think I would start Ernest Johnson if Chubb is going to play. But again, you might not have a choice. So just go with that. It's really hard to trust the Cleveland receivers. I think OBJ is probably okay. He has gotten, I think he got 7 targets last week, so that's good enough for me. And Donovan Peoples-Jones had a great game last week, okay? And I know a lot of people are going to want to start him, but just know that he only got 5 targets. He had a blow-up game. He had 2 touchdowns on 5 targets. Again, it's not a guy that I want to start for fantasy, so I would steer clear. So that's it for that game. Now, the next graveyard game is going to be the Sunday night game, and we got the Colts at the Niners. Again, you just want to minimize your starts on these teams because there's not a lot of opportunities. Obviously, with the Colts, Taylor and Pittman are automatic starts. I think Carson Wentz is a low-end streaming option. And again, here's a guy that I am going to have to start in place of Justin Herbert in several of my leagues. So I think I'm going to be fine. I think he's going to get you 20 points. That's really all you're looking for here is someone that can get you 20. I can't really trust anyone else right now. The volume on the rest of the players on this team just isn't enough to trust, but again, you're probably just going to have to start one of them anyway if you have them on your roster, but that's just something to consider. On the flip side, we got the Niners, who is a very tough offense to read here. They are going up against a decent Colts defense. I think Debo and Eli Mitchell are both starts for sure. And I think Garoppolo could also be a low-end streaming option if you need him. But I really can't trust anyone else on this offense. I mean, you still have Kittle out. He's on IR. Brandon Ayuk, you just have not seen the volume that you need to see in order to put him out in your starting lineup. So anyway, it's very, very limited options. The Monday night game is New Orleans at Seahawks. And again, we found out this past week that Michael Thomas, everyone was expecting that he was going to be back for week 7. Well, it's not going to happen. He's probably going to be week 9 or 10. So that's going to keep the New Orleans defense in low gear for another few weeks. So really the only guy on this offense that I can trust is Alvin Kamara. Of course, you're going to start him. Maybe Marquez Callaway if you need a receiver. Yeah, you're going to start Marquez Callaway. But his usage has been all over the place. And I just can't trust anyone else. There's no one else you can trust on this offense to start. For the Seahawks, again, Russell Wilson out. I did see some things that he's been, working on gripping the football, and maybe he'll be back sooner than we think. I don't think he's going to be back this week. So as long as he's out, really the only guy you can trust is DK Metcalf. Alex Collins is questionable and is a super risky start if he doesn't play because it's the Monday night game. He is like an absolute last resort for your team. Just because if he doesn't play, you're going to have a very limited window to be able to find someone else to take that spot because it's the Sunday night game. So just know that very, very, very risky for him this week. And so I would just try to stay away from that situation if you can. Now let's move on to the blowouts. So blowouts, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wow, 7 blowouts this week. So we'll see how that goes. But let's start with the Sunday early games. Panthers at the Giants. We've got some great, obviously the Giants defense, not that great. It is a top 10 matchup for quarterback Sam Darnold and Chuba Hubbard. So I think both of them are great to start. DJ Moore, obviously an automatic start. I don't think I could recommend anyone else besides the Carolina defense. I think they'll have a good game. And of course, the Giants are just the walking wounded. Who's even going to start this week? Saquon, I do not expect him to play. Devontae Booker is a risky start because the Panthers are actually number 1 against the run. So I don't think it's a very good play to play Devontae Booker if you can avoid it. Really, the only receiver that's healthy right now is Sterling Shepard. He's an automatic start because of the volume he's getting right now. I don't expect Galladay or Toney to play, and I think Engram is a desperation start at tight end if you need him. So that's it for that game. Next blowout game. Hey, how about the Jets at the Panthers? Another early Sunday game. As far as the Jets are concerned, really, I think the receivers are pretty decent options to start. You know it's going to be a negative game script, so they're going to have to pass the ball a lot. But Corey Davis, Elijah Moore, Jamison Crowder, I think are all okay to start if you need them. I think Michael Carter is also a decent start, so you got that. But that's it. That's all you can do on the Jets side. For the Patriots, boy, I got to say, man, preseason, I put all my chips in on Jonnu Smith as being the touchdown tight end on this offense, and it turns out I was wrong. It is Hunter Henry, who's gotten 3 touchdowns in a row on 3 consecutive weeks. Now appears to be the red zone target. He is an automatic start as long as he remains healthy. That was the other big issue with keeping me from Hunter Henry is his injury issues, but he's doing great so far, so just go with him. The Jets are top 10 against receivers, but I still think you can start Jacoby Myers, and maybe he'll get his tight end. I'm sorry, maybe he'll get his touchdown, but I wouldn't count on it. So, but again, basically just for PPR, I think Jacoby Myers is a PPR play. Nelson Aguilar could also be a desperation PPR play as well, but he's not getting the volume that Jacoby is, so again, much riskier there. Damian Harris is a must start, and I also think you could start Ramondre Stevenson, as I think it's going to be a positive game script for the Patriots, and so they're just going to have to burn that clock out in the second half of the game, and I think both of them will be involved in that process. Ramondre Stevenson is a very risky flex, but again, in one of my leagues, I'm going to have to start him. I just got no one else to go in the running back slots this week. Oh, it's tough. Let's move on to the Washington at the Packers. That is also a Sunday early game. Washington is another team dealing with multiple injuries. I think McLaurin is an automatic start, even though he has a tough matchup. I do not like Gibson as he's dealing with multiple injuries, but I think J.D. McKissick is a great option this week. I think he's going to be very much involved. And I do like Ricky Seals-Jones again. As long as Logan Thomas is out, I think Ricky Seals-Jones is a start. On the Packers side, the Washington defense, I don't know what happened this year. I mean, they were one of the top defenses drafted, and this is why I never drafted defense early, is because of this sort of situation where they come out and all of a sudden they're nothing like what they were in the prior season. Obviously, with the Packers, Devontae Adams, Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, always auto starts. I don't think you can trust anyone else, though, including A.J. Dillon. A.J. Dillon's been getting a lot of buzz. He's been getting more usage. But again, last week, all he got was 11 touches. So nothing in the passing game. That's below my 15 threshold for a startable running back. But again, you're probably in a situation if you have A.J. Dillon where you're going to have to start him this week. So just go ahead and start him. Next up, we got the Lions at the Rams. This is a Sunday afternoon game. The Rams defense, not as imposing as everyone thinks it is. They're not top 10 against any of the fantasy positions. So, I think, obviously TJ Hawkinson is the start. TJ had a great game last week, finally rebounded, got some really nice volume. Hopefully that will continue again this week. DeAndre Swift, good to go. And I think Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's gotten 7+ targets in 3 consecutive games now, absolutely a startable asset and a guy who I've seen on the waiver wire. So just go pick him up. You can use him immediately. For the Rams, we've got Detroit is 8th best against receivers. But are you really going to sit Cooper Kupp? I'm not going to sit Cooper Kupp. I think Stafford and Henderson are also must starts. Great matchups for them. I think Woods is just an every week risky play because he's only getting like 5 or 6 targets and touches. He has mostly been coming through with them, though. He gets you a touchdown, saves the week, gives you decent numbers. But again, it's a bottom 8 matchup for him this week, so it's going to be tough. And I would only start Higbee if you don't have any other choices at tight end. But like I said, go on to the waiver wire, see who's on the waiver wire for tight ends. There might be a better option there. We got the Eagles at the Raiders on Sunday afternoon, and this was one of my toughest to call. I'm like, is this going to be a gold mine? Is this going to be a graveyard? Really, I think I'm thinking both these teams are playing okay, but the Raiders are really playing good. I mean, I am as shocked as anyone. Really came out and just dominated Denver last week. So I'm good with them. I think they're going to take this out. Obviously, it's a home game for them. The Vegas defense is for real. I think, both Jalen Hurts and Devonta Smith are facing a top 10 defense against those positions. I'm also really liking Miles Sanders this week. I think they're finally saying that, we've got to get Miles Sanders involved in the game plan. Yes, you do, and hopefully his usage has been increasing over the past few weeks. The other guy, I want to say Galladay, but it's not Galladay. But the other running back, he's kind of faded into the background. So I think you're good. I think you're good to start Miles Sanders this week, but I wouldn't trust anyone else on this offense. We got Goddard too. Of course, you're going to start Goddard if you have him. Obviously, no Zack Ertz should lead to some increased usage. I think he'll be fine. On the Raiders side, you got Waller and Jacobs with great matchups. So great. Go ahead and start them both. Hopefully they'll have a big week. But the Eagles are fourth best against receivers. So I think both Renfro and Ruggs are risky, but they're always kind of risky to start because they're not really huge volume players, but they make big plays. So I think that's what you're riding with if you're starting them anyway. Derek Carr, I think, is also a risky start because of the pass defense. So that could limit his productivity. So I would avoid starting him if you can. Next up, we got the Texans at the Cardinals. So, a lot of games where my heavily favored team is at home, and they're going to be big. For the Texans, not much more to say other than start Brandon Cooks. That's it. Full stop. On the Cardinals side, Houston is top 10 against receivers, but you're not going to sit Hopkins, so play Hopkins. But I think the other receivers, Christian Kirk and Rondale Moore, are only start him if you absolutely need to because, again, limited volume. They're only getting like 5 or 6 targets a week, so their chance to bust is already very high against a tough defense. That's going to make it even tougher for them. I think Murray, Edmonds, Connor all starts this week. Should be great positive game script. A lot of usage for both Connor and Edmonds, so I like that. And Zack Ertz, who just joined this team, obviously a risky start. We don't know what his role on this offense is going to be yet. We don't know how well he knows the playbook yet. I would sit him if you can, but if you don't have the ability to, just go ahead and play him and see what happens. Final blowout game, Bears at the Buccaneers on Sunday afternoon. For the Bears, there's really no good options here. I mean, with the play of the quarterback, the limited pass volume, obviously the receivers are very risky plays. Robinson and Mooney, obviously start them if you need to, but otherwise I would stay away. You're just hoping that Fields can get him the ball. That's really what we're coming down to. Khalil Herbert is a desperation start against this Buccaneers top 10 rush defense. I would avoid it if you can, but you might not be able to, so just go ahead and play him if you need to. On the Buccaneers, man, again, who are you going to sit? I'm not going to sit anybody. Brady, Godwin, Fournette, Evans, Brown, start them all. Even though you know that one or two of these guys is going to be left out of the game plan, that's just what happens when you have this many mouths to feed. And you have the potential that Gronk might return. If he does, I'd start him too just for the touchdown upside because you know he's going to get targeted in the red zone, in the end zone, and so just go with that. So that's it for the blowouts. So finally, we've got the gold mines. I've got 3 gold mine games, and they are all Sunday early. So this could make or break your weekend. Although last week, I got to tell you, man, on the early games just did fantastic. I mean, it was like halfway through the early Sunday games. I was already at nearly 100 points on all of my leagues, and then the afternoon games came and just murdered my teams. It was just, it was tough last week. Just underperformed across the board in the afternoon and then didn't get any help on Monday night. But anyway, it's another week. We're going out and we're going to play some more. First gold mine game, Chiefs at the Titans. Wow. Who else was as shocked about the Titans win over the Bills? I had that labeled as a blowout game where the Bills were just going to blow out the Titans. And, man, Derrick Henry, wow. I mean, is he the greatest running back of all time? I think he's thrown his hat in the ring to say yes, he is, and I am just thoroughly impressed at how dominant he's been this year. It is just shocking how much volume they're giving him and how much production he's getting off of it and how many touchdowns. It's just crazy. And of course, everybody who took Derrick Henry is probably in first place in their league. That's what I'm going to guess. But anyway, let's talk about the Chiefs. Of course, you start Mahomes, Hill, and Kelsey. Darrell Williams is a start despite a tough matchup. Just go ahead and start him. He's going to get a lot of volume. And then Hardman obviously had a blow-up week 2 weeks ago, but then followed up with a nothing week. That's just what he is. That's how he is. Hardman is a total dice roll. He does get a good matchup. So if you need someone, I'd put him in. I think he's okay. Titans, Derrick Henry, yes, start him. He's going to break every rushing record in the NFL this season. It's crazy. Let's see here. A.J. Brown had 9 targets last week. I know Julio should help his usage. He should be very productive against this Chiefs pass defense. So I think that's good. And then Ryan Tannehill is a streaming option with a plum matchup. You know, he's going to be able to throw the ball a lot. And you know, they're going to have to score points. They're not going to just be able to lean on their run game because it's the Chiefs. You know, Chiefs are going to be able to score points. We've got the Falcons at the Dolphins on Sunday early. This is like one of those shocking games. Oh, how is this a gold mine? Well, it's because we got 2 terrible defenses and offenses which have productive assets on them. So for the Falcons, good matchups across the board. Ridley, Patterson, Davis, and Pitts. Matt Ryan is a decent streaming option. I'm actually starting him myself in one of my leagues this week. So go with that. I think they're going to be fine. They're going to score a lot of points. Dolphins, also good matchups across the board. Devontae Parker should be back this week, and I think he's a start. Waddle, of course, a start. Gesicki, a start. The backfield is a total 3-way crapshoot, but it is a top 10 matchup. Roll the dice. Hope that your guy is the guy that gets the touchdown, and go with that. Like Gaskin. I got to start Gaskin in one of my leagues. I'm not happy about it, but I really don't have anybody else. In one of my leagues, I've got literally everyone on my bench, and I've got an IR slot. 0 points this week because they're off or they're injured. And I'm like barely able to field a full team this week. That's just how it is on week 7, man. Finally, the Bengals at the Ravens, Sunday early. Great division game. I'm really excited about this. Obviously, I think Baltimore is the one favored to win. Baltimore is top 6 against receivers, but you're not going to sit Jamar Chase. You're not going to sit T. Higgins. I would sit Tyler Boyd. I don't think you can start Tyler Boyd anymore unless one of those other 2 receivers is out. He's just not getting any volume. Joe Mixon gets a great matchup, so he should have a good week. But I think Joe Burrow is a sit as well. Tough matchup, and again, tough against the receivers. That's going to limit his ability to be productive. For the Ravens, Cincinnati is top 10 against quarterbacks and tight ends, but we're talking about Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews. Start those guys, no question. Backfield is another backfield 3-way split. You should avoid if you can, but you're probably not going to be able to. I'm going to have to, I'm going to have to start. I picked up Devonta Freeman in one of my leagues. I'm going to have to start him this week because I don't have anyone else. So, roll the dice, pick a guy, and hopefully they'll get the touchdown. Marquise Brown is a start, but I would only start Rashad Bateman if Sammy Watkins sits. And it looks like he might, so I think Bateman is probably good to go. But that's it, man. That's my starts and sits for week 7. Obviously, I hope you weather the byepocalypse well, and I hope your team was built in a way that you were able to shuffle people into the starting position that'll work for you. It's not too bad in most of my leagues, but there are a few that are like I said, like the one where literally everyone on my bench is a 0-point player this week. I'm like, oh man. I almost had to think about dropping someone like Kareem Hunt because I had to make room for my starting lineup, but I probably wouldn't do it anyway. I'd just take the 0. just to keep him on my bench. But anyway, there you go. So that's it for week 7. Good luck. Like I said, check your waiver wire, as you could probably find some of these guys on here that I said to start. You might be able to find some of them. Devontae Parker, I bet, is sitting on a lot of waiver wires right now, and nobody really wants to start him, but I think he's going to be fine in a great matchup this week. It should be good. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. Have yourself a great fantasy week, and I will talk to you next week about the Week 8 waiver wire. So good luck, everybody.